Welcome to the 2021 Spring Financial Update. Today we'll be talking about budget monitoring and long-range financial planning, as well as taking a look at how our district currently shapes up in each area. Both of these are integral functions of a school district. Long-range financial planning, or forecasting, allows us to compile information and to make an educated prediction about our financial future based upon current trends. It attempts to determine how these events will impact the district and its operations in the future. While there is inherent uncertainty in education budgets beyond the current year, we use forecasting information to develop the best possible plans for our anticipated future. Financial planning and forecasting should be reviewed at least 1 to 2 times a year, as it is a fluid process with frequent changes to enrollment, state funding, and more. Not surprisingly, a big part of planning and forecasting involves reviewing the past as well, which is where we'll start today. While the district's budget is made up of a variety of different funds, this presentation will focus on the general fund. The general fund is the main operating fund that includes the bulk of the district's operations. It includes the district's capital budget as well as employees that are purchased by the Northern Sherburne-Wright Special Education Cooperative. The current general fund budget was originally adopted in June, but was recently revised for the 2020-21 school year. The revenue budget increased $1.4 million from the original amount of $47.8 million to $49.3 million. There were two main factors in the revenue adjustments. We lost revenue this year with fewer students showing up than what we projected for the school year. However, we saw a large increase in the federal funds due to one-time payments to help offset the costs and challenges of the pandemic. While those dollars increased our revenues above projection, we also saw the expenditure budget increase $2 million from $47.5 million to $49.5 million. Through the help of the CARES funds, the district hired additional classroom teachers to help with the hybrid learning models and the nature-based program. The district also enhanced the HVAC system with cold plasma improvements to make our buildings safer for staff and students. While this created some upfront costs for the district, we have seen and will continue to see savings in utilities, substitutes, and custodian overtime. To summarize, the district's expenditures are projected to exceed our revenues by $246,000 for the 2020-21 school year, bringing the total fund balance to $7.3 million. It's important to note here that we are far from the only ones. A recent survey put out by a Minnesota education group found that 92% of the 144 responding school districts projected that their expenditures would exceed their revenues for the current school year. What this means for us is that we are currently projecting an unassigned fund balance near 7% at the end of this school year. That falls just outside our board policy parameters of maintaining an unassigned general fund balance between 8 and 16% of expenditures. Due to the inherent uncertainty in financial forecasts, it is a general rule of thumb to not plan out any further than 3 years at a time. Things change, and projections are updated with the latest information to make financial scenarios more realistic. In creating these future plans, one of the biggest focal points is trying to move our fund balance back within policy parameters in a reasonable time frame, while balancing that with providing the outstanding educational experience that our students deserve. One of the biggest challenges in forecasting is that we regularly have to set our plans before we are even sure what we will be receiving from our largest funding source. Minnesota legislators adopt their biennium budget every 2 years. Their session typically ends on the third Monday in May, with the district's budget needing to be approved a few short weeks later at a June school board meeting. This means that every other year there is precious little time to update or change plans once funding from the state, which makes up 75 to 80% of our funding, is set. This forces districts to put an emphasis on forecasting and making the best version of an educated guess they can to plan for the coming year. State aid is the single biggest determining factor in how much wiggle room we have in our budget to add positions or on the flip side, the biggest determining factor in when we may need to reduce positions because state funding doesn't match the rising cost of living. Within that state aid, the largest funding source of revenue is called General Education Aid, which is based on a school district's enrollment. We are funded per pupil in our school district, so as enrollment goes up, funding goes up. For an extended period of time now, our district has experienced steady but slow enrollment growth, averaging out to around 2% over time. However, we remain prone to the occasional 1 to 2 year dips. These periods impact the general fund, as it's sometimes impossible to forecast a dip coming, which means our expenditures remain the same while our revenue goes down. This year we saw a rather significant dip from 4,236 students to 4,129 students, due largely to the pandemic. CARES funding helped offset the financial hardship this dip would have caused this year. However, we now need to factor the lower enrollment numbers into our forecast moving forward. For the 2021-22 budget, the district is assuming similar enrollment, but progressing up a grade level. At this moment, Minnesota legislators are in the process of developing the next biennium budget, which includes decisions regarding any improvement to the General Education Aid formula for the 2021-22 and 2022-23 school years. Since 2014, the average increase on the General Education Aid formula has been around 2%. Currently, in the governor's budget proposal, he has a 1% increase on the formula. Being that there are differing ideas and expectations regarding the legislative forecast, the district is assuming that the formula will increase by 1% for the 2021-22 school year and increase 2% for the following years. Forecasting these assumptions, combined with a more predictable rise in our expenditures based on lane changes, step improvements, longevity for our current employee contracts, shows us that we are on a path for our expenditures to continue to outpace our revenue. This forces us to look at two scenarios: increasing our revenue, an option we are currently exploring via a potential 2021 referendum, and/or decreasing our expenditures. When it comes to expenditures, the largest piece of a school district's budget is people. Nearly 80% of a school district budget goes towards salaries and benefits. Therefore, staffing plays a significant role in developing a budget. When revenue increases, staffing is often the first place to see the benefit. However, when revenues aren't matching expenditures, staffing unfortunately is the place where expenditures most often need to be reduced. As we look towards the 2021-22 school year, using our enrollment projections and forecasted revenue, including the removal of one-time federal funds, the district will need to reduce staffing costs by an estimated $850,000. As we forecast further out, based on current enrollment and funding projections, we are currently looking at future budget reductions of $2.5 million for the 2022-23 school year and another $1.5 million for the 2023-24 school year. As you can see in this scenario, we are making small strides to improve our general fund balance towards district policy parameters. While planning for this year's reductions is already underway, we are committed to trying to find ways to avoid future reductions. The school board is evaluating a potential 2021 operating referendum while simultaneously researching creative ways to reduce expenditures or to increase funds. The unfortunate reality is that while we continue to advocate for the state to step up and fix the ongoing funding gap in Minnesota education, we cannot rely on a state fix in the near future. Therefore, it's imperative that we continue to problem solve within our own district, either by finding a way to increase revenue or by reducing our expenditures by an amount that keeps our general fund balance within district policy parameters. This concludes the spring financial update. If you have any questions, my contact information is listed here and also on the district's website. Thank you.